It's important to note, people talk about data being the new oil, but data is only valuable if it's pre-processed and cleaned properly, because machine learning requires data. So we need to make sure, and the other thing is that there's a big cultural difference. Culture is a very powerful point. And if you're going to successfully adopt machine learning and data science, you need to have, and these new technologies, you've got to think like a technology company.
Hello everyone, welcome to a whole new episode of Engati CX. I'm your host Akanksha, and today you folks are in for a treat. We have an expert in AI and digital strategy with us on the show today. But before I introduce you to our guest, allow me to introduce you to the magic of Engati. So, Engati is the world's leading multilingual no-code digital CX platform, available across 14 channels with more than 35,000 bots created across 186 countries in every domain and use case. Engati has also been recognized as a top platform by Inc.com, TechWorld, CIO, and many others. We run the Engati blog, video channel, and the Engati CX podcast, receiving upwards of 400,000 visitors annually. So now, moving forward to our guest, Imtiaz Adam is an artificial intelligence and strategy executive and data scientist. He specializes in strategy and digital transformation with a focus on ROI. And he is well versed in AI, covering machine learning, deep learning, strategy, digital marketing, corporate development, 5G, and data driven decision making. He has had experience in advising many industries, including fintech, healthcare, marketing, and security. So, welcome to the show, Imtiaz. We are thrilled to have you here.
Thank you, Kansha. It's a pleasure to be here, and I really enjoy talking about this subject. I think we can have a very interesting and informative discussion.
Okay. Before we hear more from Imtiaz, remember to subscribe to our channel and tap the bell icon to get access to exclusive content from thought leaders like Imtiaz himself from across the globe. Moving ahead, I'll start with my first question from Imtiaz. Shall I go ahead, Imtiaz?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. So my first question to you would be, what is Industry 4.0 and what role will AI and ML play in Industry 4.0?
Well, thank you. That's a very good question. And if you don't mind, I'll quickly share screen just to,
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
give some overview. So I think visuals always help. So
Yeah.
what we can see is that this infographic just gives a high-level overview. But now we can see, if we look at the definition of Industry 4.0 or the fourth industrial revolution, which is defined in Wikipedia as an ongoing automation of traditional manufacturing and industrial practices. So essentially it's bringing large-scale machine-to-machine communication, Internet of Things, increased automation without the need for human intervention. The term originated Industry 4.0 in Germany in 2011, but it was the then CEO of the World Economic Forum in 2015 who coined the phrase fourth industrial revolution. Now we can see in this diagram, we started with the first industrial revolution around the 1700s into the 1800s, steam power, etc. Then in the late 1800s, we got to the second industrial revolution, where we moved on to large-scale mechanizations of manufacturing and steam and water power. And then we moved into the third industrial revolution sometime around the 1980s and 1990s with computer systems, robotics, etc. And now the fourth industrial revolution is moving to this new era of really advanced robotics, advanced Internet of Things, sensors, devices, machine learning, big data, etc. But it doesn't only apply to manufacturing. It applies to cities, smart cities, healthcare, etc. So it's got a broader reach, a broader term. So I hope that gives a kind of overview. And you can see from this, from Quadrant Senior IT Decision Makers, they believe it's actually going to have a substantial impact on society overall, on business and society. And that's because we're going into a period of very rapid change that is more rapid than it has occurred in previous human history. That's going to roll out over the next few years. It's 5G networks, which we'll talk about afterwards, and AI roll out alongside the fourth industrial revolution. Digital transformation is working hand in hand with that. And digital transformation has been described by Salesforce as the process of using digital technologies to create new or modify existing business processes, cultures, and customer experiences. So it results in whole new opportunities for the company. One of the consequences of the COVID-19 tragedy, I should say, is we've lost human lives and had suffering, and the economy has suffered as well. However, one of the things that is also a byproduct is that there is a rapid acceleration of digital transformation as a direct result. We've seen that those that were heavily reliant on the physical world have disproportionately suffered, whereas the online digital environment has been better placed to withstand the storm. They have still suffered, but they've done better. And so companies are increasingly accelerating that process of digital transformation. You get the likes of PwC and McKinsey who are observing in their clients and industries this accelerated transformation. So it's going to accelerate things. In fact, Twilio, a consultancy, pointed out that they believe that digital transformation will accelerate by 4 or 5 years. I think 4.3 years was the number, due to COVID-19. If you allow me, I can go into this one, or would you like to ask the next question?
Yeah. Thanks a lot for the detailed description of Industry 4.0. I'm sure our viewers will love it. So yeah, you can go ahead with more of the detailed description on IoT as well, and then I'll move ahead with the next question.
Okay, perfect. So the IoT, Internet of Things, this is actually a graphic from Imtiaz Ghosh, the visual capitalist, who published it. And I've broken it into chunks because it's a bit too large to fit on one screen. And I think it shows things very nicely. It shows how Internet of Things are devices that are connected to the internet connected, and there are billions of them. It's devices and sensors. They enable real-time interactions with customers in cities and homes and manufacturing and healthcare and all around us, and they're going to spread a lot more going forwards. I'm going to wait for Akansha to ask me the questions about AI and 5G, but essentially just note for now that the technologies involved with this Industry 4.0 digital transformation and enabling IoT to become intelligent and more capable is going to be AI, 5G and big data, going to grow hand in hand together. And the kind of segments that Imtiaz Ghosh through Visual Capitalist noted were wearables, that are going to spread out there and that could have impact in remote healthcare, for example. Smart homes, our day-to-day lives with sensors and devices around us that are internet connected, but increasingly we'll have AI machine learning on them to personalize services and be proactive and dynamic rather than just static. Smart cities, helping deal with traffic management, smart grids, energy, etc., are going to be a big factor going forwards. And as mentioned, smart industry, the ability to do predictive analytics, more intelligent robotics, etc., supply chain management are going to be big features. So essentially, I don't want to jump too much, but I'll just mention this nice page here. We're going to get this merger, this fusion between the AI and IoT, something called the edge, which Akansha will ask me about later. But essentially, edge computing, voice AI. Voice is still under development in the sense that you can use it for narrow use cases, but you can't have a dynamic discussion with it as you could with Jarvis, for example. That's going to need more advances with AI coming forwards. But vision AI is very powerful and in some cases can outperform humans. So we're going to see a spread of all these technologies. Back to you, Akansha.
Okay. This was a very detailed information about how AI and ML can be used in the upcoming technologies. But again, I would like to ask you the same question. According to you, what are the upcoming technologies in AI, and which industrial sectors are using AI and ML the most?
Sure. So we can see here in this infographic I created, it shows how AI machine learning is going to transform every sector of the economy. We can see, for example, marketing on the top right, hyper-personalization, recommendation algorithms, opportunities to upsell, cross-sell, etc., making things more personalized and targeted. We can see with healthcare, our healthcare net systems were already heavily under pressure before coronavirus came. And we've got growing populations, aging populations, more complex diseases. There were already under financial strain everywhere in the world. Now with coronavirus, the unfortunate consequence is that the healthcare system is even under greater strain. And the scars of COVID-19 are going to remain on the healthcare system even after we get a vaccine, even after we get more effective therapeutics, because there's long-term damage done to the system. Therefore, we're going to need to find next generation technologies, next generation efficiencies to help and augment the healthcare workers to help take the stress off them. So we're going to see things like deep learning neural networks. We'll talk about that in a bit more detail later. Medical imaging, disease detection, accelerating drug discovery. People don't looking and saying the traditional methods took 7 to 15 years. And with coronavirus, for example, people don't want to wait 7 years or 15 years to get effective treatments. So using AI deep learning to accelerate the drug discovery process, mining electronic health records, text mining them to make sure diagnosis is correct and personalization, preventative healthcare. So healthcare will be huge. Retail sector. Retail was already suffering before coronavirus came. Many physical retailers were having their margins squeezed. The likes of Amazon, Flipkart, others out there, Zalando in Germany, etc., have been growing very rapidly. Now, with coronavirus, we've seen that those retailers who didn't have a proper digital footprint are really stuck. And so to build an effective digital footprint, one has to bring in AI machine learning for personalization of services, for operating the retail system efficiently, like inventory management. So we're seeing things like robots in warehouses with Amazon. Amazon have been experimenting cashierless checkouts. In China, we're seeing payments with face, which is not really necessarily taken on in other places yet. We'll see. We see personalized recommendations, visual search, virtual stylists, inventory optimization, cybersecurity. Unfortunately, security or cybercrime and viruses are being used as part of modern warfare by intelligence agencies and sophisticated hackers as well. And so the data sets are very large, the means are more and more sophisticated, and AI will play a bigger role going forwards in cybersecurity. Manufacturing industry, we've mentioned, transportation, banking and finance even. And we're seeing a large-scale adoption. There are a number of the fintech sector in India has been booming, and elsewhere around the world. We've seen that banks like JP Morgan have been spending billions on technology, including AI. But JP Morgan have been a relative leader in the field in the banking sector, whereas other banks have not gone as fast, and it's been the new entrants in fintech, financial technology startups who come in and adopted these technologies quite quickly to expedite know your customer. For example, you could use a passport or a driving license, the photo in there, to recognize it with a deep neural network and check the text for the name of the person and onboard them. And during coronavirus, in parts of Europe, for example, that became quite important during the lockdown. If a bank wanted a new customer, people couldn't go in the branch. Automating insurance claims. If there's a car crash, for instance, you can check the make and the model with a computer vision, deep learning, to check the car, the color, the license plate, and that there was genuine damage, to make sure the make and the model is actually the one insured in the insurance policy. So these are just a few examples.
Yeah, so as you have the, yeah, you can go ahead.
I think anticipating that you were going to ask about the different types of AI.
Yeah.
So let's take a quick look at the types of AI and what AI actually is. So AI is defined as computing systems which are capable of performing tasks that humans are very good at. For example, recognizing objects, as we discussed just before. And you can imagine it as the umbrella case. When you look in the outer circle, you see AI, artificial intelligence. And then a subset of AI that's been driving a lot of the AI revolution in the modern world has been machine learning. And machine learning is the field of AI that applies statistical methods to enable computer systems to learn from the data towards an end goal. It was coined by Arthur Samuel of IBM at the time in 1959. And it's driven a lot of the revolution, as mentioned, in the 90s and early 2000s, and indeed the last decade. However, the area that's generated a lot of excitement over the last decade has been deep learning. And deep learning refers to neural networks. Neural networks are biologically inspired networks that extract abstract features from data in a hierarchical fashion. They have an input, an output, and a layer in between, and they have to have several hidden layers in between the input and the output. They're termed deep learning, and because they're hidden layers. And they've been very powerful in areas like computer vision, NLP, natural language processing, robotic navigation, drug discovery, all these areas, voice. That's where deep learning tends to get used. And as mentioned, it was based upon that concept. The neurons, the original paper by Rosenblatt was more on perceptrons. That didn't really scale because of the issue of linearly, non-linearly separable data, if you like, and non-linear functions, and the need for hidden layers in between, which they didn't have. Whereas now we've got more computational capability, more knowledge. We have these deep neural networks with powerful servers and graphical processing units. And then we get to the types of AI, which is narrow AI, and that's what we have today. It's good at performing one individual task. And in some cases, like computer vision, or AlphaGo, which beat the world champion in Go, in the game of Go, it can be a human. Not always, but it can. And then you get to artificial general intelligence, which is the kind of thing that you see in the movies, like iRobot, Terminator with Skynet, etc., which gets people really excited, and they think that's what Engati and myself and others are building. We're not. We're building narrow AI. AGI remains an aspiration for the future, and we can have lots of debates about what it will be, when we'll get there, etc. But the important thing is that's not the AI of today. And then you get a type called superintelligence that Nick Bostrom popularized in his book, which is where machine learning, or AI rather, has the ability to surpass human intelligence and self-replicate. Again, that's something for the distant future. There are many barriers to getting there. What we do have today is narrow AI with ways to make this world better and actually bring positive business benefits to this world.
This was really great. And since you have explained about different applications on AI and ML in different sectors, and this is the COVID time and all the schools and colleges are closed, would you like to elaborate on the fact how AI and ML can be used in education sector as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a very good point. We've seen, of course, with the various challenges posed by coronavirus to schools and universities, that remote working and indeed remote education is becoming more and more popularized and important. And wherever digital goes, AI follows, because the digital footprint left, the data that's left. And there are huge potential opportunities for AI technology in education with virtual learning and video learning. For example, you could have a virtual assistant, a tutor. So if a particular student wants more help on mathematics or learning a language, for instance, you could have a virtual tutor that personalizes and starts helping them in that area. So absolutely, education will be fundamentally transformed going forwards.
Yeah, okay. So I hope people will see this video and will make use of the suggestions and applications that you just informed them about. And I'll move ahead to my next question. What do you think the future of automation looks like?
That's a very good question again. And I think if we look at a couple of examples, this just again shows the timeline of AI, how we went from the 1950s to machine learning, as the AI winters came in 1970s, and then the second one in 1987. And AI development kind of froze with those older AI systems, and then machine learning took off, and then deep learning. And we saw that graphical processing units played a big way in helping deep learning grow, and the big data. We can also see that for all the hype, AI is still in a relative infancy. People say, where are the AI billionaires? Where are the AI trillionaires? Why hasn't it taken over the world? Well, this is from KPMG in 2018, when the hype was really big a couple of years ago. And you can see, even at that time, KPMG was showing the intelligent automation market, which includes RPA and AI, the revenues from it were relatively small until we get to around 22 onwards. And you can see this trajectory from 2021 to 2025. It's a huge growth rate. And that was forecast was made by KPMG in 2018. If anything, coronavirus is likely to accelerate this. But you can see that we're still in the relatively early stages of this transformation journey. Oh, I was jumping onto 5G. So coming back to your point on the use case examples, you can see in marketing with hyper-personalization. Take an example of Harley-Davidson. Harley-Davidson is an old-world company. It's as old-world as you can get in many ways. Yet they managed to increase sales leads in New York County or New York City area by 2,930% a few years ago in 3 quarters. And that was by using AI to find hidden patterns in the data amongst their customers and in social media and find relevant sales leads. So that's one very good example.
So as you showed us in one of your last slides, 5G is also an upcoming technology, same as Industry 4.0. So according to your thoughts, how will 5G change the way industries are operating currently?
Yeah, so 5G is set to roll out amongst many European countries, 2020 to 2022. South Korea, the world leader, already have it. It's going to be a very big technology in India as well. Over time, it's going to transform every sector of the economy. The way it's going to be a key part, or key ingredient, I should say, of Industry 4.0. And we can see much of the strategic battle that is occurring between the US and China right now is really about 5G and AI in reality. Because whoever takes leadership of these new technologies is going to be in charge of the new industrial revolution and get the huge opportunities to continue to be the global superpower in many ways, economically, politically, etc. So why is 5G actually important? Why is it different from 3G and 4G? Well, first of all, it's dramatically faster, but it's not just about speed. It's got very low latency. Latency being the time it takes for example, a server to transmit something to the front end or the receiver to receive it. And in New York, for example, with 4G, New York, apparently, if I recall correctly, according to some of the studies, has some of the lowest latency in the US with 4G. And it's still getting 40, 50, 60 milliseconds in some cases. With 5G, we get to the potential of 1 to 4 milliseconds of latency. That's very near real time. You can start to do near real time interactions in industry, in healthcare, on-the-fly engagement with customers as they walk around a shopping mall, for example. You can get to real personalization and instantaneous interactions. The other big thing is that 4G networks are pretty much maxed out in capacity. If we're going to have all these new devices coming from IoT due to Industry 4.0, 4G can't handle that. Whereas 5G can handle a massive increase in device connectivity. For every square unit, it can take exponentially more larger number of devices. So that's going to enable AI on the edge in the network. What do we mean by that? Well, this diagram for University of Paderborn shows it. Right now, today, much of the AI, or machine learning and deep learning, is sat on a remote cloud server where the data is stored and processed. As we go into the world of 5G and Industry 4.0, edge computing is going to become more and more important. So edge computing means the edge of the network. And you can see it's billions of devices and sensors all around us. And increasingly, AI is going to be on them. Your mobile phone, a year or two from now, a new one, may well have AI, an AI chip, a GPU on it, and have AI actually operating on the mobile phone. Smart cameras, smart sensors in factories and hospitals, etc. Autonomous vehicles will need to have, when they do arrive, I know it'll take a bit longer, but they will need to be able to have AI on the edge, on the device itself. So we're going into this world where AI is going to be on the device itself increasingly. And that's going to, because going back and forward between the cloud would be too much traffic with all these devices, and also latency could cause accidents in healthcare or an autonomous car or robot, whilst it's waiting for a signal to come back or if the signal's broken. So increasingly, it's going to be on the devices around us. And what does that actually mean? It's going to mean a huge increase in data. Actually, this is more going into just the 5G. I mentioned this bit because people get scared hear the scare stories about 5G. But in actual fact, and this is from Imperial College and published in the BBC, it shows 5G is non-ionizing radiation. So ionizing radiation is the one that's dangerous. Sitting in the peak sunlight is important, it gives you vitamin D, but if you're not careful, you can also do a lot of damage to yourself. Whereas 5G is non-ionizing. It doesn't go through our DNA and our cells. So those scare stories are kind of like being fake information. And the UK government Ofcom point out, going back to the devices element, how 5G, we're going to get technologies like virtual reality and augmented reality, which struggle with 4G because 4G isn't fast enough, the latency is too high. So with virtual reality, one of the problems people get, if they go left to right very quickly, they go faster than the image and they feel seasickness. With virtual reality and augmented reality and a new standard from JPEG called JPEG XS, a new compression standard designed to work with 5G, that goes away. These technologies will work as intended. So there's going to be really exciting new business opportunities. Maybe 2 or 3 years from now, we'll be doing this talk in a holographic format and with mixed reality. Who knows? But the key thing is more devices will be connected, which will mean e-health, like remote health, transport logistics, environmental monitoring, which is increasingly important for all of us, smart agriculture, smart retail, and these instant responses as we discussed with devices. So again, you can see this services hierarchy with 5G. It's totally different from 3G and 4G. High definition video, you'll be able to download HD video exponentially faster than you can with 4G. Self-driving cars, mission critical applications like health, machine-to-machine communication on a massive scale with smart cities. All these technologies are going to be key drivers there. A couple of quick points I'll make on this day is that as these devices scale, this is from Statista Consultancy, they point out in their forecast that by 2025, we'll have 75.44 billion internet-connected devices. Take a step back and think what that means. That is an average of 9, more or less, approximately 9 per person on the planet. Wow, 9 per person on the planet of internet-connected devices by 2025. That's huge. And the amount of data that's going to generate is huge. So we'll need machine learning to make sense of that data. This is from IDC, the consultancy. Look at this increase in data. Now, IBM have a statistic. I think it's the last 2 years, 95% approximately of data in human history was created. Well, that's going to be a drop in the ocean in terms of what happens going forwards. Take a look at the dramatic growth in data. We will need machine learning and deep learning to make sense of that data. There is no new AI winter coming. Some people say, oh, we're going to have a new AI winter. We might have an AGI winter because AGI didn't arrive because some people hyped and said Skynet, etc., was on the way, and iRobot, etc., whether you believe good or bad, whatever. But AI is not going to have a winter because we need AI technology to make sense of this data and find meaningful interactions automatically. This data is too big. It's too vast even for an army of millions of humans who could be highly educated and intelligent. Crunching through that data is just too vast. So that is the world we're going to, data-driven world. I'll say this thing. This is interesting because it came from Intel Oven. Intel commissioned Oven to forecast a report for the media sector. And they showed that by 2028, $1.3 trillion for the media sector will be generated through 5G-related activities. 5G will account for $1.3 trillion, say that again, by 2028. And the tipping point, they said, was 2025 because it would go over 50%. But look at this, account for more than 50% of revenues for the media sector through 5G-related activities or capabilities. But look at this from 2022 to 2025. Look at that trajectory. It's very steep. So 5G networks are going to start scaling 23 onwards around the world. And it's going to bring fundamental changes in every single way that we can't even imagine. This one is a screenshot from Microsoft HoloLens. And what they actually showed, and I think this really encapsulates very nicely the kind of world we're going to be into. What you see in there is that you see a lady who's a senior Microsoft executive, and she's giving a talk, and she's and through the HoloLens mixed reality, that's a 3D hologram of her, real-time live in front of thousands of people. Not only that, but it then used AI, deep learning for neural translation, and translated her talk into fluent, perfect Japanese with her voice. So think about that. Think about that for a moment. In coronavirus, many of us, for a period of time, had lockdowns, etc., or our companies encourage us to do remote working, and we've been reliant on Zoom as we're doing this talk right now. When we get 5G-enabled augmented reality and mixed reality glasses, which, by the way, Facebook are planning to launch those next year. Apple are thinking about 2022, rumor maybe next year, but Apple are debating whether it's better to wait for 5G networks to be more widespread in 2022. Microsoft with HoloLens, etc., and all the other tech majors, Samsung, they're all looking to launch these. Now, we can see when the exact timing will be, but in the next, say, 2 to 3 years from now, we'll have these technologies. And then language goes away as a barrier, and you can do remote working. You were talking about education, etc., seeing the other person as a hologram in 3D, engaging with them, hyper-personalization, all kinds of new experiences, doing design work, etc., you know, reaching out, interacting with things, merging the physical and digital world together in ways we can't even believe and envisage right now. It's going to be so exciting and amazing.
Yeah, this whole slide is so interesting, and thanks a lot for giving so much details on 5G and its application and clearing some of the myths related to 5G that people have as of now. Any other thoughts you would like to share with our audience?
Yes, thank you. I'll just see. I'm going to just go over a couple of slides quickly. This it just shows the scale of data that's been created in an internet minute. It also comes from visual capitalists. Data never sleeps, and you can see the advantage the social media and tech major giants have. Having said that, when we go to this era of 5G and connected devices, a lot of data is going to get created there as well. So whatever your company does, you're likely to get a lot of data being generated as well in this era. And it's important to note, people talk about data being the new oil, but data is only valuable if it's pre-processed and cleaned properly, because machine learning requires data. So we need to make sure, and the other thing is that there's a big cultural difference. Culture is a very powerful point. And if you're going to successfully adopt machine learning and data science, you need to have, and these new technologies, you've got to think like a technology company, whatever your underlying business is, because technology giants view technology as a revenue generator, not just a cost. But many of the legacy companies view technology purely as a cost, and they don't see the business benefit. And that's going to be a very important cultural change that needs to occur going forwards. This just is from Boston Consulting Group. This is a consulting company, and it just shows the AI in the ghost, AI in the factory in this new era, how with intelligent automation and sensors, etc., you can do predictive analytics. So, for example, if a machine is going to go down, take the car industry as an example. Now, I know coronavirus, unfortunately, has hit the sector very hard. But in the pre-COVID days, the estimate was that every 1 minute of unplanned downtime due to a machine tripping cost the car industry $20,000 to $25,000 approximately every 1 minute. Now, if you can use machine learning to predict when it's going to happen and prevent that, that's a lot of money you can save, and you extend the asset life of the machine, because these machines get damaged from these unplanned outages, and they can cost 10 million, 50 million, whatever. They're very expensive. BMW won an award this year for AI, and you might think, oh, autonomous driving, but actually no, it was for the factory, putting AI in the factory, and they used computer vision to all around the manufacturing site to see what was going on, where it was going wrong, that the paint color was correct, the badging was correct, checking for defective parts, etc. So that's another good example. So I just want to mention this one as well, because I think this is important for all of us, given the world we live in. And when we move to the post-coronavirus era, hopefully next year, fingers crossed, we can get successful treatments out there. But an important thing is that coronavirus has damaged human health, but it's also damaged the economy. It's damaged our world. Increasingly, our governments are going to look at ways to stimulate the economy, to get people back to work. At the same time, there's a pressure on how to deal with climate change and the environment. We all want a cleaner environment too. And with these new technologies, Industry 4.0, 5G and AI, we have huge opportunities to actually generate employment, GDP growth, and reduce emissions. So this on the left-hand side is actually from PwC and Microsoft. And it shows that we can increase GDP by 4.4% globally, or $5 trillion by 2030, just in these four sectors: agriculture, energy, transport, and water, just those alone. That's 38 million jobs plus from today. And that was before the coronavirus downturn, so it's probably more. But we can reduce greenhouse gases globally by 4%. And using the US as a proxy with 5G, Accenture showed how many jobs and GDP growth could come through on the city the size of Chicago, scaled out to Mumbai, scaled out to Delhi and Bangalore, and just think about the opportunities. This bit is really looking at the future, and it says, you know, when are we going to get to this world of AGI? We don't know. There are many challenges there. What I do believe, though, and I want to leave this as a positive note, is that humans will learn more and more about ourselves as AI progresses. It's not going to, AI won't advance in isolation. To get to stronger forms of AI beyond narrow AI, we're going to have to take more and more inspiration from biology and understand the brain better. The likes of Stanford University, with their neuroscience team, are actually using AI to learn more about the human brain. And then you can transfer that learning back to AI to make more powerful AI. So it's a symbiotic relationship. And whilst Elon Musk, whilst I respect what he did with PayPal and getting Tesla up and running, I think he slightly exaggerates things at times. So when he was saying that we'd have level 5 autonomous cars in 2020, well, not the case. And when he says that we're going to have human brain interfaces and chips in our head this year, not going to happen either. But human brain interfaces, where you can wear, rather than a chip in the brain, a thing on the head, has shown genuine usage already. So for example, with people who are paralyzed, we've been able to show how we can use neural interfaces that sit on top of the head with AI combined and read the thoughts of the person and command a wheelchair, get them to move it around. So what I'm trying to say is that as we learn more and more of AI, we'll learn more about, use AI to learn more about our brains. We'll also then use that to improve AI, but we'll do that symbiotically and learn more about ourselves. So hopefully when AGI does come, maybe in 20 or 30 years, who knows, it will be a beneficial relationship. Humans will also be a lot smarter. We'll have these interfaces that we'll put on our head, which will use AI as well. So I don't think AGI will come out and just wipe us all out. That's a key part I want to make.
Yeah, I'm really excited to hear these top 40 pop songs from AI, auto-generated pop songs.
Well, I'll do so. I'll just start. So that was the Harley Davidson one that we already talked about. But there you see, real world use case. And one more quick thing that I'll do. This just shows computer vision. You see on the left, this is actually my algorithm, one that I built with deep learning. On the left, you can see patient number 1, convolutional neural network. It's obvious to the human eye. On the right, you can see what it's looking at with a saliency map, a heat map. So then the doctor knows, the doctor or the medic can have confidence in terms of what the algorithm is looking at. But we actually outperformed the human dermatologist, who's highly trained specialist, who hits about 86.6% accuracy on skin cancer. We got 90% with an imbalance, 7 classes imbalanced. If it was binary imbalance, we'd probably hit 99%. But here you see patient number 2. This is the key thing. Look, it's hard for the human eye to see. And a tired dermatologist who's been working 15, 16 hours a day maybe might accidentally miss that. The AI deep learning algorithm picks it up and tells them what they're looking at. This is the BMW example. I just skipped through banking because we talked about it. You see how AI will scale all across payments, insurance, etc. This one shows the BMW technician using augmented reality, but also how we can combine that with AI in the factory to find defective parts, etc. And then just quickly, healthcare, because I think this is very topical in terms of coronavirus and what we're dealing with, healthcare crisis. Accelerating drug discovery is mentioned, rather than waiting 7 to 15 years and spending $500 million to $2.6 billion, trying to get dollars per drug. We can try and accelerate that. Medical imaging, we just looked at, and diagnostics. Electronic health records, as records are increasingly electronic, to do text mining with transformers and deep learning to make sense of that and understand it. Robotic surgery, it's already been conducted successfully remotely with 5G, for example, with a surgeon was a long way away, 3,000 kilometers away in one case in 2019, and in Spain, I think about 7 kilometers away. And then clinical trialing, how we can use AI and 5G combined together with IoT and wearables to understand the impact in remote medicine, etc. So I think I'll stop the slides there and really go back to the dialogue with yourself.
Yeah, so actually, really speaking, these slides are really very much detailed, and a person who will see this video will get to know most of the applications of AI and ML and automation, and also more details on 5G. So yeah, thank you so much, Imtiaz, for giving us your time. Your insights are really very valuable, and I know our audience is really going to enjoy this interview.
It's been a pleasure, Kansha, and I look forward to doing the next one in the future. And maybe one day we'll do one holographically as well.
I would really request you to share this slide personally with our team so that we also can go through these sites in details and know about so many applications which are to be coming in our future. And because of coronavirus, you informed us about whole new area of application which will help people to go through this pandemic situation with ease. So yeah, this was really helpful for all of us. Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Thank you very much.
Yeah, okay. We'll be back with a new episode with a brand new expert soon. So stay tuned and we'll see you around for the next one.